Hello and welcome back to the top 85 games for the BBC Micro Video Countdown series. In at number 23, it's Rocket Raid. Now, this game was released by Acornsoft in 1982 and it was developed by Jonathan Griffiths. Now, this won't be the only one of Jonathan's games that we'll be looking at in this series, but it is the first of his that we've looked at so far. Rocket Raid is in fact a BBC Micro clone of the famous 1981 arcade cabinet game Scramble, which was actually released by Konami only a year earlier in 1981. Distributed by Stern in North America, it was a huge commercial success and sold well over 15,000 cabinets. Now, in my opinion, Rocket Raid is one of the finest clones of Scramble for any platform, not just the Beeb. It plays incredibly well, it's got fantastic graphics and sound effects, and it is just an all-round excellent game and a firm favourite of BBC Micro players ever since it first came out. Now, it is a notoriously hard game, there's no question about that, but it is a game that really does set the bar at a level where you just want to keep playing to get better at it. Now, in theory, it's possible to complete the entire game in just under 3 minutes. I've seen people on YouTube manage this. I'm not going to make any promises that I'll be doing the same in this review, but we will at least give it our best shot. So without further ado, let's play some Rocket Raid. Okay, so let's start it up. Here we are, Acornsoft Rocket Raid. We've got some instructions, or actually more of a sort of backstory to the game and how it works and the various different phases that you can expect to play. We'll be staying a lot in the first phase of the game, just to give you advance warning of my abilities at Rocket Raid. So you can see here that we can actually pilot the ship up, down, forwards and backwards. We've got, oh, well, that was a great start. We've got the ability to shoot in the forwards direction and also drop bombs. Worth saying that the key layout for Rocket Raid is not the easiest to control because you can move forwards and backwards using shift and space. Your bomb is on the tab key and your shoot is on the enter key, and then up and down are controlled with A and Z. So you really have to kind of have quite I would say, Rachmaninoff style hands to really be able to manipulate the keys in a way that makes it possible to navigate through the game as a single player. Now, I have heard from various tales of people who had the game back in the day. There you go, get myself into the top 8 scores there. People who had the game back in the day who would actually play this as a two-player cooperative game with one person on controls and another one on basically on the bombs and shooting. Because actually keeping up a repetitive shoot and bomb pattern while you're going along is not the easiest to do if you at the same time need to manipulate your ship. See, this forwards and backwards motion with a shift and space is not very easy to control at the same time as shooting and bombing as well, let alone trying to duck down and kind of swoop across the surface of the gamescape here as well. But notwithstanding all of the difficulty that the controls actually do pose, I think we should really remark on just what a beautiful game this is and how fast it is as well. I mean, this is a Beeb game that really does truly feel like an arcade game. There have been lots of ports of arcade games for the Beeb. God, I made a lot of progress there and then got crashed at the last minute. There've been lots of arcade ports for the Beeb over the time that the Beeb and the Electron were popular machines back in the day. But it's fair to say that not every arcade port was a success. But I think that Rocket Raid, as essentially a port of the game Scramble, it really does play and feel like an arcade game. In some respects, even the sort of layout of the keys is a bit more reminiscent of an arcade machine, with buttons kind of laid out in in such a way where you can control them sort of with both hands spread out across the not exactly a keyboard, but the sort of button panel of an arcade machine with a joystick, obviously to control the ship. I think if you played Rocket Raid with a joystick, just pressing the fire button would result in bombs and shooting at the same time. So I think this is one of these games much better suited to the joystick than it is to the keyboard. Obviously, you've got greater flexibility of control, going up and down, forwards and backwards. Now, you will have noticed I've been spending an awful lot of time in what is essentially the first phase of the game. There you go, that's the end of my round there. It is quite a punishing game. You only get 2 lives to start with, so not a lot of lives to play with. And as you can see, this first sort of phase with the magenta sort of lunar scape here, sort of reminiscent of BMX Biker on the Moon. It's not too difficult to navigate. It's quite easy to get through. But once you get to this cave of, well, I won't call it a cave of wonders because I personally find it a sort of cave of frustration, if I'm honest. These bouncing bombs are incredibly difficult to navigate. The way that Jonathan Griffiths has programmed this is that actually trying to weave around the pattern of these dancing, jumping bombs is very hard work. They don't follow a consistent pattern all the way through, so you have to be constantly swerving up and down, and also attempt to you can at least shoot some of them out of the way, which is a relief because that saves you from them in a lot of cases. But yeah, getting through that cave, as you'll have already seen, we're almost 5 minutes now into actually playing the game, and I've still managed not to actually get out the other side of the cave. Now, I will do my very best to endeavour in this review to at least get past this phase, because it is not actually the hardest part of the game. The hardest part of the game is a part that I have never managed to get through, and I have only seen it completed in the videos of others, far better players of Rocket Raid than I. But essentially, you've got that first magenta lunarscape where you're basically just dropping bombs and shooting as much as you can. There's only a couple of obstacles in the form of flying rockets. Then you've got this bit, which is, I suppose, technically the second phase of the game, where you've got to get through the tunnel and out the other side, moving your way past these dancing bombs, which I am continuing to fail to do. And then if you do manage to get out of the other side, oh god, well, that was a terrible start. I think I might reset and start again, because to be honest, if you lose a life that early on in a game that only gives you 2 lives, there's really not much point continuing. So judicious use of the escape key there lets you just start again. But yes, as I was saying, if you get through the cave, it takes you out into, I think it's a green lunar sort of landscape, and in that case it's similar to this level, except that in addition to these things on the ground, you also have what I think are sort of meteorites or flaming comets flying at you, and you can't shoot them. So at least with these dancing bombs, you can shoot them, to varying degrees of success, I should add. But once you get out of the other side of the cave, yes, the meteorites, you really just have to keep out of their way because you cannot shoot or bomb them. I suppose one thing that Rocket Raid does do, which is one of its few I guess concessions to the player, is that if you do make it at least as far as the cave here, you don't have to fly across the full lunar landscape again. You can start from the entrance of the cave, but you do have to get all the way through the cave before you kind of benefit from another, if you like, save game space. It's not really a save game, it's more like just picking up the game from a particular point in the gameplay. But you do, as I say, have to get through the cave. And it's not enough even to see the end of the cave. You have to get all the way out the other side, see the palette switch to a green landscape, and then you're able to, if you've still got a life in your life bank to spare, having got through the cave, if you lose a life at that stage, you can at least start on the other side of the cave. Once you get past that post-cave landscape, I think it goes to some kind of skyscraper blue landscape, which isn't too challenging, and then it takes you to the very final step of the game, which is a yellow maze. And as I said earlier, I have never managed to clear that. It is fiendishly difficult. I know that it is technically possible, having seen other people do it, but in practice, very, very difficult to actually accomplish. One of the amazing things actually about Rocket Raid is the fact that if you are good at it, which, as I think we've clearly established, I am not, but if you are good at it, you can complete the entire game in just under 3 minutes, and that is pretty impressive for an arcade game. It might lead you to think, well, why would I bring it in at such a high level in the rankings? I mean, a game that could only occupy you for 3 minutes in a single sitting doesn't feel like a great game. But as I'm hoping I've amply demonstrated, actually getting to the degree of skill where you can complete the whole game in such a short space of time, you would have to play this game for hours and hours and hours to become anywhere close to being able to complete it in a single sweep. I have to say that even to get to some of the stages that I have got in the past, to get best at certain phases of the game, I've certainly made use of save states on the emulator. I make no apologies for that. I feel that that gives you at least the opportunity to explore the game in a bit more than you might otherwise do if you just tried to start from the beginning every time. I have had one or two pretty lucky breaks where I've managed to get through the cave, out the other side, and onto the skyscraper level in a single sitting, but that doesn't happen very often. As you can see, the cave is usually what does it for me. But yeah, the reason I've brought the game in at this level, at number 23, is because it is just such an exceptionally well put together game and incredibly addictive. I think anybody that had a Beeb back in the day is familiar with this game. It's one of Acornsoft's classic titles. Obviously, Jonathan Griffiths was one of the great programmers from Acornsoft, responsible not just for this title, but several other very popular arcade-style games. He actually also wrote a great book on creative assembly language, which is basically all about how you can use assembly language coding to code games very much like Rocket Raid. So yeah, a fantastic programmer and a fantastic game, and that's why it's in at the level that it is at number 23. But yes, as you can see, much as I do love the game, I'm not especially good at it. But there's something about the game that no matter how bad, in my case, I am, you just keep wanting to play it. Because there will be times, and we've seen, I think, a hint of it in one of my earlier attempts here, there are times where you just get tantalizingly close to the end of the cave and you think, you know what, I was almost there, I'm going to play it again. I'm sure I can get there next time. And of course, you don't. But you just keep wanting to try, and you'll get a hint of it again and think, yes, this time it's going to be different. Um, and I think that's kind of at the heart of the appeal of the game, really, is that even if you're not particularly good at it, you feel like there's something about it that says, well, in theory, if I could just judge the pattern of these dancing bombs correctly, if I can just play it enough times to figure out how they move, I could get really good at this. And of course, some people did. Some people must have persevered with this game for hours and hours and hours, until they got to the stage where they could clear it in one go. With or without a second pilot. As I do love the idea. It's not something that I ever did myself, as my brother and I have quite a big age gap, and so we never actually played. Yes, there's not much point. Let's start that again. We never played Beeb games together, so wasn't until he got a little bit older and we would play some of the early PC games together, and obviously console games later on. But I was always a solo Beeb game player, always have been, probably always will be, to be honest. And yes, I've not benefited from the sort of second co-pilot, if you like, to make games like this one, and indeed Fortress. It's another one that benefits from having somebody else on the keys. I think in theory you could probably split Rocket Raid into 3 players because the keys are so spread out. You could probably have somebody doing up and down, somebody else doing forwards and backwards, and someone else again on ammunition. I don't know how easy it would be to play the game like that, but I'm sure some people must have tried it. But yes, we're now nearly 12 minutes into gameplay, and I'm still not managing to clear this cave. I did say at the start that I would do my best. That was clearly not one of those best attempts, but I'm going to keep going because I do feel that first of all the game deserves it, and secondly there's just so much to love about Rocket Raid that I feel that I couldn't make a review that didn't at least manage to get us a little bit further into the game, just so that those of you who maybe are new to Rocket Raid, perhaps didn't have a Beeb back in the day, but have taken to playing some games on emulation, or maybe there are some of you that never actually knew of Rocket Raid. I think there were 1 or 2 other Scramble-like variations for the Beeb. I think there was one, Moon something, I want to say. Is it Moon? Maybe it was Moon Raider or Moon Docker or something. Yes, there were definitely at least a few other Scramble-style games, but Rocket Raid, as I said at the beginning, far and away the best of any Scramble-like game. It actually gives... Oh my goodness, look at that! Oh, so tantalizingly close. Even the palette had changed to green at that point, but then I managed to blow up at the very last step, and I didn't have any lives to spare, so that was that. Um, But as I was saying earlier, it's just even that hint of having got out of the cave is enough to make you feel that you want to just keep on playing. And well, here we are, now up to the 14th minute, and I'm still doing it. So maybe keep fingers crossed. I won't keep my fingers crossed, obviously, that would be quite an impairment to making any progress in the game. But those of you watching along with me, let's keep fingers crossed and see if I can actually get through the cave and out the other side, because I feel the game deserves it. Oh, here we go, here we go. There it is, we've cleared it. Oh my goodness. Well, at least I had 2 spare lives to be getting on with. That would have been quite a disaster if I hadn't. So you can see now we've reached the green stage. This is very much a case of just strafing the ground very low, bombing as much as you can, and keeping well out of the way of those meteorites, because, as I say, there's nothing you can do about those. You cannot hit destroy those. So you can shoot them, but it doesn't do anything. Something else I probably haven't pointed out up until now is the fuel gauge up at the top, obviously one of the key dynamics of the game. I think Scramble probably was one of the first games to come up with the game dynamic of blowing up a fuel depot in order to recharge. Don't really know how that works in practice. Oh, I got to the blue stage! Oh, we've still got a life left to go. Here we are. So this level is relatively easy, this part of the game. You just fly over and bomb stuff. And including fuel, which recharges your fuel. It is a strange game dynamic. I said the same on Fortress. Why blowing up a fuel dump would create more fuel for you, I don't know. And this is the notorious level stage, yellow stage, which I have crashed and burned on. So I'm going to do a little bit of creative editing here so we can just pick things up again from the blue level, just so that you can see a few more screens of that. As I was saying before, this part is a sort of lull before the storm. A fairly easy part, certainly compared to what's gone before it. Not really any threats here, possibly the occasional rocket, if that. There you go, that's it. But this stage, you really have to be able to flex your forwards and backwards motion to be able to get through and backwards, and I am not able to do it. So we'll give that, well, I've only got 1 life left, and it's curtains. So there you go. I think we've probably given Rocket Raid a fair run for its money. Apologies that we didn't really get to see a lot of the later stages of the game, and you saw rather a lot of the early stages. But it's a fantastic game, fully deserving of its slot in at number 23. And if you haven't played it before, do give it a try. And I hope you'll join me for the next game in the series. Until then, goodbye.